from the beginning. So, hi everybody, welcome to another Chats with Chaudhry. I'm delighted to be joined by one of the co-authors of Hot Off the Press report on cell and gene therapy from CRB, Noel Maestre, who is director of SlateXpace, with an emphasis on ATMPs. So Noel, bonjour, how are you?
Very good. Thank you, Rizwan. Very nice to be on your podcast and delighted to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you too. So where are you calling in from? Because I think it's very early in the morning where you are at the moment.
It's a bit early, yet calling from San Diego County.
Well, it just shows how different the world is that we can communicate all these different hours of the day. So thank you very much for talking to me. Before we start talking about your new report on cell and gene therapy, perhaps you can tell people a little bit about CRB and your role within it.
Sure, glad to do that. So CRB is an integrated architectural, engineering, construction, consulting firm with a heavy emphasis on the life science industry. We do some food and beverage work as well, but I would say predominantly been focused for 35 years, heavy focus on the life science industry, anywhere from the R&D facilities all the way to the manufacturing process and how you actually manufacture these therapies.
Right.
In my role at CRB, so I've been with CRB for about 15 years now. I'm a mechanical engineer by background. Started with CRB in our Philadelphia office, as I mentioned, about 15 years ago. And I've worn quite a few different hats throughout my career here. About 11 years ago, I moved to our San Diego office, which is a very small office at the time and has grown significantly. And I've really kind of transitioned throughout my career from mechanical engineering to heavily into project management. And what I've been doing for the last 5 years is really just leading the operations out of our San Diego office and been working on an exciting initiative that we released about a month ago called SlateXpace.
Right. And what is unique about SlateXpace?
So SlateXpace, the way we look at it is, so if you look at the biotech industry, it's been around for, let's say, 25, 30 years. There's been many iterations and revolutions in the biotech industry, right? If you start from the big stainless facilities to the advent of closed processing as opposed to open processing, to the move to single-use technology, which then have enabled the ballroom concept. Also, those have been kind of the major changes in the biotech industry. And then what happened about 5 or 6 years ago is cell and gene therapy products came on the scene. And so that's been the big shakeup for the pharmaceutical and life science industry. And so that's created a lot of new challenges from a manufacturing and facility design standpoint. And so SlateXpace, the way we look at it is we feel that it's essentially that next future facility, that next iteration of facility design to be able to accommodate these new novel cell and gene therapy products.
That all sounds very exciting. So tell me more about the report. So why did you create the report? What areas does it cover? And what makes it unique compared to the other reports out there on the cell and gene therapy industry?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rizwan. Obviously, you can go out there and download a multitude of different industry reports out there, right? The reason why we developed the report is really stemming from our clients. Being a consulting firm, we have the capability of working with a multitude of different companies, different processes, different regulatory philosophies, therapies. And so we get somewhat of a unique perspective or kind of a broad perspective of what the industry is doing today, right, what trends we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years, and the ability to project some of those trends. Our clients a lot of times don't have the ability to see what a lot of the industry is doing. And so we get asked these questions, many a times throughout the years. And so figured that for this year in 2020, we would actually create an industry report that looked at both what the industry is doing today and where we see the future of the industry trending. I'd say one of the things that you'll notice that's not included in the report that you'll find in most of the other industry reports out there is it's completely devoid of any financial projections or anything about mergers and acquisitions or market, growth projections. It's really focused on the technical aspects of the therapies, the facilities, the regulatory aspect. Really, how do you take these therapies from the R&D stage all the way to commercial licensing, and what are all the trends that we're seeing in the industry?
Obviously very, very topical right now, with everyone's looking for a vaccine for COVID. So obviously a very important subject. So how did you conduct the report survey that you did to generate the report, and who did you speak to?
So we took our client list. So we've got, we surveyed about 150 of our top clients, and that's an array of, startup companies to big pharmas like the Mercks and the GSKs, to CMOs and CDMOs, and try to cast as wide of a net as possible, and created a survey internally asking a lot of very intentional and focused questions around what changes have transpired over the last 5 years, and then where clients want to be in the next 5 to 10 years. And we took all that data and then had a handful of our subject matter experts who also have pretty good insight on where the industry is going, and took that data and married everybody's kind of expertise and insight, and out of that created a report to really focus on the future of cell and gene therapy specifically.
Right. So what are some of the main findings? I mean, obviously it's quite a big report, I think 59 or 69 pages, if I remember correctly, looking at it. So there's a lot of information in there. Can you give us some of the top line highlights and findings that you got from the report, and maybe putting in context into the current climate as well?
Sure. So there are quite a few findings in the report. I guess if I was to summarize it in one sentence, I'll borrow from something from Game of Thrones and say that change is coming. Right? There's going to be a massive disruption, massive seismic shift in how the industry operates today versus where it's going to be 5 and 10 years from now. And that's coming in many different forms. It's not just the science, for example, or not just the technology. So, one of the things that you'll see with the cell and gene therapy industry is there's a handful of drugs that are commercially licensed out there. But if you read the other industry reports, you'll know that there's over 1,000 cell and gene therapy products that are in phase 1 through 3 clinical development.
Sure.
Right?
There's a lot in the pipeline. Yeah, sure.
Ton in the pipeline. And so that means that we're going to be seeing a lot of approvals happening over the next 10 years. And as these approvals continue to happen, that's going to continue to drive more innovation and more research and more clinical trials. So one of the trends that we've identified, and I think the industry overall has identified, is there's a major shortage of manufacturing capacity for all these upcoming therapies. In our position as a consultant, we're seeing both the owner-operator companies, whether it's big pharma or startups, and CMOs, all building pretty much as fast as they can in parallel, because the owner-operator companies are seeing that there's a very long backlog for CMOs and CDMOs, and so some of them are trying to pull their products back in-house, and the CMOs are kind of, they've got 1.5 to 2 years of backlog, and so they are also continuing to build out as much space as possible. And so there's a huge shortage today. Everybody's trying to build space, and so we'll see when that equilibrium kind of shifts. But I would say some of the key points that we're seeing in the industry from a trends perspective is, the first one would be the science itself. There's a lot of processes that use kind of less than ideal technologies from the scientific perspective. So things like adherent cells versus suspension cells, right, or be able to move to producer cells where you don't even need to do a triple transfection. We're seeing clients wanting to move away from one viral vector to another type of viral vector, or even getting away from viral vectors altogether because they can use cleavage enzymes. And so the science is continuing to evolve because it is such a novel scientific breakthrough with cell and gene therapy. So that's one portion of it. The other piece is the manufacturing processes are also evolving and changing. If you look at therapeutic proteins or monoclonal antibodies, they've dominated the industry for about 20 something years.
Sure.
In the last 15, they became pretty well platformed. So, one product looked very much like another. And so you could utilize a facility that manufactured product A and bring in product B and make a couple, unit operational changes. But you pretty much knew these products were defined before they even got into the manufacturing space. Right. Nowadays, with cell and gene therapy products, there's so many different modalities and variations that there's not equipment that is specifically designed and has 10 years of kind of being tested and proven in the industry. And so we're using a lot of laboratory techniques and then moving those over to the GMP manufacturing environments and trying to adapt those to making GMP product. And so I've kind of used the analogy of we're back in the dark ages of biotech in a sense. Like the science is really advanced, but the technology for a lot of these companies is an operator sitting at a biosafety cabinet working on an open process, and that's the GMP process that they're using for early scale clinical. But the problem with those is that they don't scale well at all, right? So we need to, when you talk about the manufacturing process, there's a heavy emphasis and a lot of discussion around closing down the process, coming up with technologies that are specific to cell and gene therapy products and they're adequate, automating the process, right? Don't want to have humans in the clean rooms. That's where you're going to get your highest potential for error. And so really just trying to go back to where therapeutic proteins are currently today is the same evolution that we want to take with cell and gene therapy products, except we don't want to take 25 years. We want to do this in a matter of 3 to 5 years. And so there's a very heavy emphasis on manufacturing technology and what is that going to look like in the next couple of years.
Do you think, just to interrupt you for a second, that obviously with the search for these vaccines now for COVID and the investment that has gone in now from governments as well as the pharma companies, that's helped speed up this process that you're talking about in terms of, getting to a point where the technology is matching up with the science?
I think so. From our perspective, we always used to laugh 5 years ago when clients would come to us and say, this is a fast track project, right? Because every project is fast tracked in the life science industry. But what we've seen since the rise of COVID and the whole scientific community trying to get together to solve this problem is what used to be a fast track project is now basically not even an industry benchmark nowadays. Clients are looking to take that fast track delivery process and shave 30% off that timeline because speed to market is more critical than ever.
Yeah, warp speed really, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
It's warp speed really.
Warp speed, yeah. We're doing quite a few of those warp speed projects and they are a paradigm shift when it comes to delivering a facility. And also when it comes to the technology is how quickly can we get these technologies that, used to take a long time to kind of gain vast approval or adoption from the industry, is we're seeing more and more people willing to innovate as opposed to the traditional mantra of show me the same facility or a facility that is the most progressive, but that is licensed. Right, that's what a lot of our clients were asking us when we're trying to push some of these forward-looking concepts. Is they're saying, "Well, I don't want to be the first one to do it." Nowadays, that's changed quite a bit. People understand that they need to innovate because the science is evolving, and so everything else around is evolving. And COVID has definitely kind of accelerated that.
Well, I think I agree with you. I mean, I think the whole thing with COVID now is that it's forced people to become a lot more flexible in their thinking, particularly in an industry like pharma, which is very innovative, but is very conservative by nature, and is forced people to start to be more open-minded in terms of the way they approach things and try to be more lateral thinking, maybe in terms of the way that they look at things now than they historically did. You can't always do what you used to do now because that doesn't work, does it? You need to think of new ways of getting a quicker result, and that's forced people to down that line of thinking. I think a lot of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you look at the regulatory agencies, they are becoming more and more open to, they're not relaxing their standards, but to looking at things through a different lens and looking at, you know, a risk-based approach to be able to accelerate the development and the commercialization of some of these drugs that are, they're really just critical to solving some of these problems there.
Fantastic. So is there anything else? Because obviously there is a quite big report, and people can download the full report and get in touch with you. We're going to put the link on how people can get more information from you about the report. Is there anything else of that you'd like to highlight, and which stuck out for you when you did the report and the survey, that really struck you and said, well, actually, this is something quite big and different that would be worthwhile sharing?
Sure. So one of the other major shifts is, if you look at the biotech industry 5 years ago, like I said, it was dominated by 2 or 3 modalities, right? 2 different therapy types. And so therapeutic protein is by far the most dominant. You know, we had vaccines and we had a couple other kind of less common modalities. If you look at, you know, 2 or 3 years ago and really today, first, there's a huge resurgence in vaccine manufacturing, right? Because of the COVID pandemic. Therapeutic protein is still very strong. But then in addition to that, you've got these pipelines that are extremely complex, because if you look at a biotech or pharmaceutical company, they're now trying to develop therapeutic proteins, vaccine, cell therapy, autologous and allogeneic, viral vectors or gene therapy, and then all the different components that go into making some of these cell and gene therapies. So they could be making their plasmids, they could be making you know, some of their mRNA. And so there is this shift now towards multimodal manufacturing. And what multimodal manufacturing used to look like 5 years ago was, we have 3 modalities and we're going to build 3 different buildings on the same campus maybe, but they're going to be completely separate. And as the industry is progressing and realizing that they're just going to continue to wrestle with these very complex pipelines, and that it's very costly to build these very specialized dedicated facilities, there's a move to try to bring all those modalities under a different roof, which is starting to happen. A lot of CMOs are starting to do it or already doing it. But even further, to take that idea kind of to the next level, is building spaces that are almost decoupled from the therapy or the manufacturing process. So forever we've been building, you know, CAR T cell therapy spaces, and that's all they can do. You can't manufacture a viral vector or gene therapy in there, or, you know, a space for plasmids, and that's all it can do. It's dedicated. And so, you know, if you don't have a need for it, it's kind of obsolete. And so what we're seeing is more and more clients being interested in this idea of, how can we build these ultra flexible manufacturing facilities that allow you to campaign different modalities. So if you can imagine that you had, you know, 4 clean rooms or 4 manufacturing suites, and you didn't really have to know what product had to go in there because they're flexible enough to be able to support any of those products, then that's really kind of the next iteration of facility design and facility operation.
That's really interesting. And I suppose that's the way the world is going, isn't it? That more flexibility in things that you have, that you can use them for more than one thing at any given time as well.
Absolutely. I'd say the last thing that we're hearing and seeing a lot about is, well, maybe two quick items. One is supply chain logistics. So everyone's concerned about their supply chain logistics. And so we're seeing more and more companies try to become vertically integrated as much as possible. They're trying to bring a lot of that back in-house, whether it's because it was coming over from overseas, and so now there's some challenges with getting things shipped from overseas, or just the reliability of of their network because there's such a high demand for all these raw materials. So that's a big piece of it. I'd say the other major trend that we're seeing in the last physical conference that I went to, it was heavily focused on cost of goods, right? There's a couple therapies that are released out there that, you know, the price tag was in the $500,000 to $1 million, and it really just, you know, kind of upended the healthcare industry, right, and the health insurance industry. And so I saw a really interesting graph that was showcasing that, you know, therapeutic protein, when they're manufacturing the first therapeutic proteins, the cost per gram was astronomical, sure, right? And if you look over the years, that's just been that trend has gone steadily downwards as people adapt technology and manufacturing platforms. And so, you know, in today's world, now we're talking about cures potentially, not necessarily just treatments or therapies. And so there's obviously a price tag associated with that versus, you know, a treatment you'll take over a period of 5 years or 10 years. But there's a huge drive to be able to reduce the cost of goods. And so all the things that I've talked about earlier about closing the process, automation, removing, you know, clean room operators out of the clean room, the science evolving, all of that all plays project delivery, capital delivery trends. All of that plays towards minimizing the cost of goods and eventually reducing the cost of these therapies and making them affordable for everyone or the general public.
Well, it's a very, very exciting space with lots going on. So thank you for sharing some of the findings. It is genuinely very interesting to hear the results and the trends out there. So if people want to know more, how can they get more information?
So if they want to be able to download a free copy of the report, they can just go to CRB's website, which is www.crbgroup.com.
And that link will be above the video. So in case no one actually remembers to write that down, I will put the link above the video so they can download it. And I'm guessing they can also leave a comment below the video, get in touch with you if they've got any questions as well, Noel.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be able to answer any questions or any thoughts or insights, and very much welcome to reach out to me.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you very much for taking time out to talk to me about it. We could talk for hours about it, literally, because there's so much to talk about in this particular area. It's a really interesting topic, but thank you for giving me some top line figures there and some highlights from the report. As Noel said, there is a full report. It's about 59 or 69 pages. I can't remember the exact length, but there's lots and lots of great information in there. So if you want to know more, download the link from above the video. Get in touch with Noel and the rest of the team if you'd like to know more as well. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer your questions. And all that's left for me to say is, Noel, thank you very much. That was great. Great to meet you and great to find out more. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Rizwan. It was a pleasure being on your podcast, and look forward to hopefully doing it again sometime.
I hope so too. I would look forward to get a follow-up to this actually. And to all of you, I hope you found that really interesting. As I said, it's a really interesting topic, very, very of the moment. So please feel free to leave comments below the video if you've got any thoughts on what Noel talked about, whether you agree or disagree with those trends from your own experience. That'd be great to hear that as well. And as always, until next time, stay well and stay safe. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.